Good morning, folks. Thank you so much for being here to the Monmouth Regional Chamber of Commerce ChamberCast for August 2024. I want to thank all the folks that are watching as we're streaming online and the folks that have had an opportunity to be here in person today. This is one of the most significant power hours you're ever going to experience when it comes to the health, safety, and protection of yourself, your family, and the folks that you care about, and our community as a whole. My name is Terrence Wall. I'm honored to host this event, and I'm going to introduce our guests in a moment. But I want to share with you, have you ever had a conversation with folks where you weren't sure if you really had much in common when you start the conversation? But then by the end of the conversation, you realize you have so much in common and so much common purpose. That's today. Spoken another way, how many folks are familiar with Snapchat? I'm assuming most of the folks here. How many folks are familiar with the fact that a teenage boy or girl can buy a pill online with Snapchat, have it delivered to your door, put under your doormat while you're watching a movie or out to dinner or doing something with your family, and they can take that pill and die? And take a pill with a quantity of fentanyl that fits on the tip of this pencil. Most folks may not be aware of that. And we're going to learn so much critical information today that you can use. And this is also a legacy to Anne and her family and her beautiful son, Weston, who we're dedicating this video podcast to, this ChamberCast. We want to thank all of you for being here. Thank you so much. What I'm going to do, I want to also, of course, thank Bell Works, Ralph Zucker, and the Inspire team. Thank you, obviously, to the Monmouth Regional Chamber of Commerce. The work that you're doing in the community for local residents and businesses matters a lot. And of course, thank you, Ming Chen. He's always flying from places far, far from here with his famous journeys, and he makes time to be here for us, and we thank you for that. Today's topic is one that touches every family and business in some way. It's shining a light on fentanyl poisoning and overdose awareness. Fentanyl poisoning is something that you're going to hear more and more about as there's this tremendous impact on children dying. Not your typical overdose programs, and nothing's typical about it. It's awful, all of it. But things have changed radically, especially with synthetics, especially with what is being put out there today, and you're going to hear from our experts today. August 31st marks International Overdose Awareness Day, which is a global campaign to end overdose and to remember loved ones who have died from an overdose poisoning. Our guests are Raymond, Santiago, Monmouth County Prosecutor, Lindsay, Ashwal, Assistant Prosecutor, Intake and Case Screening Recovery Court, and Fundner, high school graduate from Homedale. So we have a Homedale grad in the house. Two of them. So that would be one too. National Fentanyl Poisoning Awareness Advocate, and spoke recently at the RNC. So she may be familiar to you with a very powerful story of love and her legacy. Philip O'Hara, Senior Vice President of Business Development, Legacy Healing Center. Phil has been a part of Hazlet's Hope Network since it was founded. So folks, what we'd like to do is go around the room, just share who you are and your business, of course. So our guests also know a little bit about you, and then I'm going to share their biographies, and we're going to dive right into it. Thank you very much. Jeannie?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Therese Rolke. I'm the Executive Director of the Monmouth Regional Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gail Bonus, and I am the new Administrative Specialist with the Chamber. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Howard Stein. I'm the owner-operator of Home Helpers in Freehold, New Jersey.
Good morning. I'm Tara Demianovich, the Director of Communications and, oh my goodness, at Community Affairs and Resource Center. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jenny DiVirgilio. Work for a company called Puro Clean. We clean up disgusting messes, except the kids.
Good morning. I'm Ivy Chaycott with Fighting Gruber Law, locations in Metuchen, Wall, and Bordentown.
Thank you. And you're also involved with the Monmouth Regional Chamber of Commerce's really special signature event, which is
Athena.
And what's the date?
November 8th.
All right. Thank you. Would you like? Okay, you're good.
Morning. I'm John McGuire, the juvenile detective for the Homedale Township Police Department.
Good morning, Jeff Ackerson, captain with the Homedale Police Department. Hi, I'm Kara Badger. I'm a financial planner here at Bellworks for Northeast Financial Network.
Hi, I'm Will Murnan. I'm the development manager at the Arthritis Foundation.
Good morning, Jared Logan with Go for Hire, Career Services and Staffing in Freehold.
Hi, my name is Michelle Fugit. I'm Director of Recreation for Carewin at Homedale. I got to keep them happy.
That's right.
Hi, Miriam Baresh. I'm a financial advisor in the area.
Gary Gelman, Gelman Images, full-service photography, video production, serving Monmouth County for 35 years.
Hi, I'm Rosalie, and I'm with CSAV Systems.
Hi, I'm Anna Apollonia. I'm broker manager at Heritage House Sotheby's International Realty, and I'm also the president of the Colts Neck Business Association. We do have a great event coming up September 8th. It's the polo event in Colts Neck. If you want to tailgate, you can come and see me.
Yes, it's a fantastic event. I'm Jeannie Wall, and I'm the owner of Hometown News LLC, publishing for Tap Into in Monmouth County. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, folks, I want to introduce our guests. I'm going to speak quickly, but I want you to hear about their background a little bit, and you'll see how what may appear to be divergent interests all are interconnected in dealing with the scourge of fentanyl. Honorable Raymond S. Santiago was confirmed by the Senate in November 2022 following his nomination by Governor Phil Murphy to assume the role as the 30th Monmouth County prosecutor in that office's history. As the county prosecutor of Monmouth, Santiago is the chief law enforcement officer overseeing a law enforcement agency with a staff of approximately 275. I also want to shout out to thank the members of the Homedale PD that are here to take in this critical information as you work hard to every day to serve the community and the region as well. Prosecutor Santiago is responsible for the coordination of the law enforcement efforts of nearly 4 dozen municipal police departments and 1 college police department, serving Monmouth County's approximately 650,000 diverse residents. Thank you for being here. Assistant Prosecutor Lindsay Ashwal has been a prosecutor since 2007. For the first 10 years of her career, Lindsay worked at the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, where she was a senior assistant district attorney conducting numerous jury trials relating to gang and gun violence, sex crimes, and infant homicides. Tenacious would probably be an understatement for you. Tenacious. Thank you for all that you're doing for families. In December 2016, Lindsay began working at the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office, currently the Recovery Court Prosecutor and the coordinator of the Recovery Diversion Program in 7 municipal courts, the Restart Diversion Program in Superior Court, and countywide mental health referral and follow-up program called Link to Care, and countywide multidisciplinary resource team called the Operation Hope in Monmouth Resource Team. Now that's a lot, and she's going to unpack that, as the phrase may go, a little bit, because there's incredible information that's important, the tie-in to poisoning, the tie-in to mental health, the tie-in to overdose awareness, and how all of these things are in many ways inextricably linked, and the resources that the county is putting forth so we can save lives. And that is something I was mentioning to Ann and the prosecutor a little earlier. We don't know who, we don't know where and when, but someone's life will be saved today, because this is both streaming live and it resides on social media as content that folks can use, that families can use, and send to their friends and family for people that are in need. Because one of the key items is, when we're done, to make sure we share the links, the resources, the phone numbers of those valuable resources that you want folks to know about. We're going to talk about that as well. Ann Fundner, Homedale High School graduate, grew up in Homedale, attended Homedale schools. Ann and her husband were raising their 4 children in California at the time of her beautiful son Weston's tragic passing. She recently shared her mission on a national platform at the RNC. She's in town for a period of time visiting family. Now we have her with us at ChamberCast to help share your important mission. Thank you so much. And of course, Phil O'Hara, Senior Vice President of Business Development for Legacy Healing Center. Phil has been a part of Hazlet's Hope Network since it was founded. What a fantastic organization. Hazlet's Hope is a peer-based organization that was founded to help those struggling with substance use disorder. Phil's unique understanding of substance use disorder from a personal point of view, as he himself has been in recovery now for many years after almost losing his life to drug addiction. Phil's passionately dedicated to providing hope and helping others with substance use disorders, realizing that they too can recover, lead a normal, happy life, and that change is possible. And he travels across New Jersey to different high schools, thank you so much for that, to provide motivational drug prevention talks. And I'll share with you, the superintendent of Homedale Schools was just giving a tour to all of the new teachers. And they didn't expect fentanyl to be on their course matrix this morning, but they were, all of them, the new teachers were just made aware of the incredible content that's here, and they can review it as they go on to educate the next generation. So you're having an impact before the first word. And like I said to the prosecutor, my goal is actually not to talk too much, so I'm almost done. But as long as I'm talking about you, I'm in good shape, I think. And we're going to go over the content and the contacts that people can use, but they haven't heard about it yet. And can you tell us about Weston? Can you tell us your story? Because really, that's the legacy that's going to come from this meeting, and we're honoring your work on his behalf today. And then we're gonna tie it together with the other folks that are here and all the efforts that they do, because that's really, it's about Weston and all the children and all the families out there, if you would.
Yes. So my son is Weston, and he was my firstborn son. He was everything. You know, as a mom, if you can relate, you look at your child's eyes for the first time and you hold him in your arms, and you've never known love like that. And that was Weston. He was everything to me. I made sure that, we made sure that he was, played sports and, did well in school, and we chose private schooling for him, and, the right friends and the right environment, and, got embraces to make sure his smile was going to be great so that he would...
Living and loving life.
Yeah, everything was, we did everything right. He was a 3.5 GPA, played hockey, football, he was a surfer. He had tons of friends. He had a heart of gold. He literally had a heart of gold. I mean, people would talk about just how caring he was and always doing the right thing and standing up for kids. Just a really stand-up kid. Went to church on Sundays, youth groups on Wednesdays, and church retreats. I mean, we had a really nice life in California. And, fentanyl still found my son. And it was... when he went to a new high school, he wanted to try the high school experience. He went from a student with 40 kids per grade approximately to, a high school that had several thousand people. And it was just a different environment. He wanted to fit in. He was very well known in his private school, but this was a new experience that he wanted. So, he tried to connect with the fun kids like any kid would. And social status is, equivalent to being a millionaire. It's very important to children. And so, he met a group of friends, and I had educated him, and he knew better than to ever try anything that someone gave him. But I don't know what he was thinking in a moment of peer pressure. He sees all of his friends doing something. I don't know what it was, but he decided to give it a shot. And got a hold of him, and with no return. And that's the thing that these kids these days, he was given something that he thought was a Percocet, and if he had tried a Percocet, he would still be alive today. But it wasn't a Percocet, it wasn't pharmaceutical grade at all. It was a fake pill, blue press powder, with a marking on it that said M on one side, 30 on the other, and it was pure fentanyl inside. And it doesn't give kids a chance to learn from their experiences. And then it is so addictive, 50 times more addictive than crack, that within 2 to 3 hours they get withdrawal symptoms. If they survive the first pill, it's not a matter of if they're going to die, it's when, without severe intervention. And a lot of times they don't tell their parents that, they're struggling. That's when the drug dealers come in, who have the mentality of sexual predators and groomers. They will come in and say, we know that you're going to need this. You can't tell your parents. You can't tell your parents. So just take a little bit more. It's going to ease you. And this is why you see so many kids dying in their beds, because they're trying to get over an addiction they never knew they were going to have, because they tried something one time to be cool. So I always tell parents to speak to your kids about peer pressure. That is the most important thing, because my son knew everything there was to know about never trying drugs. I had talked to him about it since he was a little child. But I assumed he was strong enough to handle peer pressure. So run scenarios, role play, go over things with your kids. Let them know, give them the courage and the strength that's necessary to say no. because it's not easy for them. It's not. And so when people say, what's the best thing that I can do? Obviously talk to your kids about drugs, but please talk to them about peer pressure, because it is so strong.
Thank you so much for that. And Weston was poisoned, really,
It is absolutely poison.
by really a modern day terrorist.
Yep. I mean, the drug dealers, like I said, they know what they're doing. They speak your kids' languages. They know exactly how to manipulate them. They're very good at what they do. They're criminals. I mean, they're selling poison to kids. It is a poison, and the way I explain it is, in the 80s, they had the Tylenol cyanide crisis, where they had 6 people die from, I think it was 6 people, die from cyanide-laced Tylenol capsules. And they pulled all of them off the shelves in a matter of seconds. Why? Because cyanide is a poison. You can't get your hands on cyanide if you tried without some sort of professional license yet. Fentanyl is more deadly per volume than cyanide, and it's in 15-year-old hands, 13-year-old hands, 12-year-old hands. I can't tell you every day how many kids whose parents come to our groups shattered. Their life just fell apart, and they don't know how to put the pieces back together because they lost everything in a second. And I'm sorry. and so I guess my point is that this is not an overdose. You'll hear that word a lot. This is not an overdose. Fentanyl is so lethal, and it's in children's hands. And it's in, even in, people who are addicted, they don't deserve to die from fentanyl either. Everybody deserves to recover and to get better, but fentanyl does not give you that chance. It doesn't. It is so strong. It is 100 times stronger than morphine. And it gets a hold of you. And most of the time, people will not recover if they tried it one time. That is a poison. 2 salt grains is all you need. 2, and not kosher salt, I'm talking the iodized, the small little tiny pieces of salt. 2 salt grains. And that's it, to die from fentanyl. This is poison we're dealing with. Poison, and it's in children's hands.
Thank you so much for sharing the message. And we're going to talk about the criminality in a moment, but I'd like, Phil, can you differentiate between overdose and poisoning? Really, in effect, if you're a drug dealer, you're not a drug dealer, you're a terrorist, you're a murderer, really. The synthetics and how there's this delta, this change between the overdose dynamic and challenge with poisoning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And as you were talking, you're talking about your son, I'm thinking about when I was 15. We tell kids that drug and alcohol ruin your lives, but the first time I took a drink in 7th grade, it physically felt good and I had fun, right? So instantly everything they told me about drugs and alcohol being bad went right out the window with one experience, right? And then my first pill was when I got my tooth pulled by the dentist my sophomore year, and I was given Vicodin, which was a Tylenol opioid mix, and I took that before wrestling practice, and I physically felt good, and it gave me the energy, and I had another very positive experience with something that's supposed to be bad, which was the beginning of my addiction. That being said, I was a kid that recreationally tried a drug, as kids have done year after year in this country, with no real consequence other than they're trying marijuana or they're trying this. The difference is now our drug supply has been poisoned with fentanyl, and now we have children that are dying of fentanyl poisonings. These are not drug addicts that are dying of overdoses. Your son was not a drug addict. He was a child being a child, and as much as you taught him and as much as you told him, kids are kids, they're curious. It doesn't matter what was taught, it doesn't matter what he knew. He was just being a kid, and our drug supply has been poisoned. So we're seeing way more children dying, younger people. Terrence, I've been up here a bunch of times, and the stat that always gets thrown out is the 80 students from Raritan who have died of overdoses since 2001. That is not a unique problem to Hazlet and Raritan High School. It just so happens that you have Coach Nooch, who has been in the school for 30 years, and me going through the list and remembering each one and putting it down. If you look at all of these schools, I guarantee you that the numbers are close. And now let's look at college campuses. North Carolina lost 2 students to fentanyl overdoses, right? They lost 14 students in 1 year. I think like 8 were suicides, 2 were overdoses, another one was a car accident. I was just reading it on the way here. But who's not going to talk about overdoses? College campuses, right? Duke, you think Duke University wants people talking about how many students have passed away on their campus of overdoses, right? I want to know what that stat is. How many accidental poisonings has happened on college campuses throughout this country? And I guarantee if somebody could actually find that data, the numbers are staggering, right? And again, these are not drug addicts on campuses dying. These are kids that are being poisoned. Our drug supply has been poisoned. The opioid epidemic went from pharmaceutical drugs to heroin, from heroin to fentanyl. And now we're educating kids on fentanyl, and now it's moving into synthetic drugs, right? Methamphetamine use is going to continue to skyrocket. There's a new drug out that's hitting New Jersey called Tusi, which is it's like a pink drug mixture of MDMA, fentanyl, cocaine, and the effects that it's having now.
And trank, right?
Well, no, that's trank dope. That's a whole nother. That's horse tranquilizer that they're mixing in the fentanyl. That's something complete. That's another thing, right? So now, exactly what you're talking about. We have a laundry list of synthetic drugs. That now the opioid epidemic has become the synthetic drug epidemic, and the synthetic drug epidemic is affecting people's minds in a way different way. And now mental health is skyrocketing across this country, and we don't have the mental health residential facilities in this state to help the people that we need. So to watch how this has gone from pharmaceutical grade opioids to now this synthetic drug market that has completely poisoned our drug supply, it's only gotten worse. It's only gotten worse.
And Prosecutor Santiago, prior to running the organization, 20 years as a criminal defense attorney, right? And so you've seen folks that are getting caught up in this and trying to navigate that. What's happening from your perspective? Because you're on the, someone who's engaged in behavior that is problematic. They don't realize the prosecutor is coming to, in many ways, help them. It just may not be clear at that moment. Can you speak to that and speak to how you're navigating that in your offices?
Absolutely. So one of the things that is maybe foreign to others is the fact that the prosecutor's office is truly there to try and help the greater good, the greater public. Even when people don't want that help, we're there to try and give that support that they need. And there's a clear distinction between the individuals that we have an obligation to prosecute and to criminalize and to put them in jail as long as we can because of the actions of what they're doing. And then there's also the realization that there are people who just need help. They're suffering from a disease, for the addiction, and those individuals need our support and help as well. And throughout my career, I'm saying now 30 years in criminal law, I've seen both sides of the issues of what people are struggling through. And even in my own personal experiences, I've shared this publicly about my own mother who had an addiction problem with heroin. And again, it started off with prescriptions, then it went to medications, it was heroin. She's passed, but right now, when we look at the numbers, just 4.5 years ago, the submissions of all of the drugs that we would receive were heroin. Only about 21% of those had a compound of fentanyl mixed in with that heroin. Now, in Monmouth County, we have 96% of every heroin submission that we submit to a lab has a chemical compound of fentanyl, or multiple versions of fentanyl as well, because now they're mixing it. And the reason why they're mixing it is because it's cheaper to make. So the drug dealers who are looking to make profits don't care about the toxic levels, they care about the profit margin. And that's the one thing that I want to express to our young people and to our older people, because one of the things I've always told people this, it's not just about young people as well. I've seen so many people who were recovering addicts, who were in their 40s, 50s, 60s, who now all of a sudden say, I'm going to try this new drug that's here, and think they can just take one, and that one substance will kill them.
And isn't it 30% of the intake of one of your diversion programs, I believe, is for folks that are older, right?
So
to your point.
Yes. So one of the things that when I became prosecutor, I had a very unique situation that Lindsay Ashwal was an assistant prosecutor. I was the public defender in the city of Long Branch, where the RDP program, the Recovery Diversion Program, which is for municipal court, first began. And the idea behind that was to make sure that the most busy courts that we have here in New Jersey are municipal courts, to have the most contact with individuals, that they'd have a resource which wasn't there before to provide people with the opportunity to get substance abuse assistance, but also mental health assistance as well. And there's a big correlation between the two, where people sometimes are medicating themselves because of an ongoing, maybe non-diagnosed mental health condition, that they're just trying to take something to medicate themselves because that's the quickest, easiest thing to get. So knowing or recognizing that, the RDP program was born as a pilot program in Long Branch, and I, on the defender side of it, had the obligation to review these cases with those clients. And my perspective was, I was there to try to encourage them to participate, to be, because one of the biggest things was it was going to give them the most support they'd ever have in their entire lives, with a team and a network that believed in them, that wanted to see their success, from a judge, a prosecutor, defense attorney, our recovery coaches, clinicians. Everybody was there in support to try and help them. So to me, my mission was very clear when I became prosecutor, was we needed to expand this program as much as we possibly can so it's available to every resident in Monmouth County. And that's why, very proudly, we're in 7 towns, and we are continuing to expand it as much as we possibly can.
Thank you for that. Assistant Prosecutor, you're integral to the success of the program. Can you share, we identified a few different programs earlier. Can you share the nuances of each one so folks are aware, in case they want to share this information with friends or family, so they can avail themselves of it?
So what the prosecutor just spoke about was the Recovery Diversion Program, and as he said, it started out in Long Branch, and now we are in Asbury Park, we are in Red Bank, Howell, Keensburg, Freehold Borough, and we're going to be expanding in the fall to Wall Township. So that program, as he had eloquently said, is for both substance use, mental health, or co-occurring disorders. If someone is charged with a low-level crime and they're a nonviolent applicant, they will become eligible for the program. They could be offered this program in those municipal courts. If they're linked up to services through our clinicians, our recovery coaches, and they remain arrest-free, they are eligible for a dismissal upon successful completion of the program. And to date, we have graduated over 50 individuals from that program. It started in November of 2021, which was the first time that I believe, around that time is when we came and we spoke here earlier. And since that time, we've expanded to 6 other towns, which is great. Additionally, we have 4 other programs, really 3 other programs that I'll describe to you. One combines 2 programs. One is called Operation Hope in Monmouth, and that is more of a deflection program. So it really speaks to what Ann was talking about. It's getting out into the public, almost getting ahead of the issues. We know what the issues are, and if we have a multidisciplinary team out in the public, educating them, providing resources so they don't come into the criminal justice system, we believe that we not only can handle public safety, but also that our numbers will come down in terms of overdoses. So we go out to different facilities all throughout Monmouth County. I want to highlight 2 in particular. One is a warming center called the Hope and Comfort Center in Red Bank, and that strictly deals with men experiencing homelessness. And another is a female homeless center, which is also in Red Bank, and that is called the Heartwarming Center. We have an initiative called Breakfast with a Side of Hope that takes place during the cold blue season, so when it's freezing outside. Every Monday we're with the women, and every Friday we're with the men. We educate them on all the resources that are in the county. We talk about the substance use resources, the mental health resources, resources linking them to housing, resources linking them to education, resources linking them to getting their identifications that they may need to be able to pursue a life of dignity. So that's Operation Hope in Monmouth. We have expanded that through Prosecutor Santiago to include other initiatives, and I want to highlight one in particular, which is Student Leaders of Hope. And the prosecutor has been a real champion for Student Leaders of Hope. We started out in Long Branch, going to the Boys and Girls Club. It's an after-school program where we educated them on different advocacy tools. And this, again, goes back to what Ann is talking about. Ann did everything right as a mom. And ultimately, what I have learned in my role is that sometimes the people who have the biggest impression on our children are their own friends. So we go out and we educate the young students, middle school, high school students, and we teach them about addiction. We teach them about mental health. We teach them about resources. We bring in different leaders from all different walks of life who have either walked in their shoes or are now experiencing, the life of hope and dignity that we hope for our young students. We were just at the Neptune High School this past summer, which has been wonderful, and I know the prosecutor wants to continue to expand that. We also, through Operation Hope in Monmouth, have something called Empower Her, where we want to empower women and men in recovery to have these advocacy skills, these problem-solving skills, so they don't have to resort to drug use. Instead, they're able to use their own communication, their own confidence abilities to get through life and navigate without drug use. So that's Operation Hope in Monmouth, in a nutshell.
And so for so many folks, they're not aware of the programs. They wouldn't even know where to go for programs that they're not aware of, right? So part of this is communicating it, but on the ground, on a day-to-day basis, are the men and women in blue who are interacting with the public, which is the segue into a very important program, Link to Care. Can you chat about that a little bit? Because when they're at a home and families are struggling, they're looking for resources, not just the strict law enforcement, the criminal code and that process, which is very important as well, but to redirect and to get folks on the right path. Can you chat about that program that is available to law enforcement?
So the Link to Care program is a very unique program. It was born out of an Arrive Together model. So Arrive Together was started by the Attorney General's office, where they link up crisis intervention trained police officers to mental health specialists, and they arrive on crisis scenes to be able to navigate and de-escalate those scenes safely and to have a successful result, which ultimately leads that individual linked up to different services. On the flip end of that, our prosecutor views mental health almost on a spectrum. So you think of it as from the least to the most intervention needed. The least would be any family member dealing with any sort of mental health issues. They just need to be linked up to potential services, some sort of therapeutic intervention. And we have our Link to Care resource card for that, which lists a lot of different mental health resources for people to get linked up to. Then we have those individuals, and especially our officers who deal with this on a regular basis. We're getting a lot of calls that don't rise to the level of a crisis. So they don't rise to the level of our Arrive Together program, but yet if we leave these individuals not linked to services in the community, they're going to decompensate. We're not saying we're hospitalizing these individuals, but just without having services in the community, they're going to continue to decompensate, and they're also going to continue to call 911 and use our police resources when what they really need is to be linked up to our mental health resources. So for those individuals, police officers can refer them to a team of mental health specialists, and those mental health specialists then reach out to them and try to link them up to any sort of service that they may need, whether it's mental health service, housing services, therapeutic services, etc. If they're veterans, try to link them up to veteran services. And if they're not successful in reaching them, then at that point they make a referral to the Arrive team, and the Arrive team can then go out to that individual's house to say, Link to Care tried to reach you. They weren't successful, but we think you may benefit from mental health resources. So to date, we've had over 120 referrals, and I think the statistic, Terrence, that you were talking about in the beginning, that almost 30%, deals with something that was very interesting. In Monmouth County, we have a lot of senior citizens that live here. And for the statistics that we've seen about 27 to 30% of our calls are coming from those individuals that are senior citizens. So we put together a senior citizen committee through the Link to Care initiative that we have, and we created a Link to Care senior citizen resource card, and it lists everything from mental health services, housing, anything by means of transportation, medical intervention. It lists a bunch of different services that have been provided to all of the police departments to send out to the different residents of Monmouth County. It has been sent out to all the senior centers in Monmouth County. And just to piggyback, also our Operation Hope in Monmouth initiative has a resource card as well, and officers every year go out and they continue to give those out to their residents as well. So we're trying to really shine a light on the resources that that are available here in the county. And of course, you can go to our website, which is www.mcponj.org. And if you click on the community initiatives links, you could see all of the initiatives that Prosecutor Santiago has started, and it lists how they work and where the resources are that you could find.
Thank you so much for that. Would you like to follow on? Anyone want to add to her comments on that topic?
So, I mean, the one thing I just wanted to emphasize is the fact that we've made these services available countywide, and we've issued them to each police department because the officers know in their own jurisdictions, what resources are needed and who may need them, and people don't always want them when they first are received. So it's about the continuity of making sure that the information is available, building that trust so that we know that not all law enforcement is there for bad reasons. They're there for support and for help. The officers do an amazing job, and the Arrive Together program really was spewed off the fact that we demand so much of our law enforcement, and they deliver. But we need to make sure that we give them all the tools that they need so that they know how to handle. They're not mental health workers, but we expect them to deal with mental health crisis on a daily basis. So why not give them the support and the tools that they need so they can make sure that we have successful results? And the Arrive Together program, spewed off of that, and really what happened from that standpoint was we recognized that there was so much more needed in the county that wasn't there. Education is an important aspect of it, and one of the things I would find out is that there's a lot of programs that are available, and there's great, wonderful programs, but they're not useful if people don't know about where they are and how to reach them. So that's where these resource cards became very important, to make sure that they had something that was accessible, that could be handed out and be given to anybody who may need it repeatedly if necessary, just to make sure that they had that information available.
Thank you. Go ahead, Phil.
I just want to say, I got sober in 2016, and back then it was like change the stigma, break the stigma. That was like the big thing. And over the last 8 years, I've watched how this has kind of developed in law enforcement, and I just kind of want to pat you guys on the back for the job that you've done, because I think Chief Meehan told me this from Hazlet before he retired, is that we've expected cops to go from enforcing our laws to now being domestic violence response team, crisis workers, therapists, interventionists, and the job's really changed for them. But over the last 8 years working with the police departments, I've seen individual officers really buy in to helping the people in their community. And I think we've really changed the stigma for law enforcement as far as looking at people struggling with addiction as people that need help, right? And this newer generation of cop that's in their early 30s that grew up in the opioid boom and epidemic have seen their friends fall. They've seen good kids that they grew up with, that they were friends with, fall to addiction. So I really think that's helped change law enforcement's view on us. And there's so many officers that really, really buy in to helping these individuals. And I get calls, through Hazlet Hope, a lot of times through like 4 or 5 specific officers that I could, in my head, notice the most. That they're out there on the front lines, that are quickly conveying a message of hope to the individuals that they're arresting. They're not just processing them and letting them go. They're taking the couple of minutes to talk to them and offer them the resources. And then I constantly see each department sending people to the county crisis response training, and it's the longer that we're out, the more officers that are getting trained for the response team. And you guys have done a great job over the last 7-8 years that I've watched this happen to help people like me. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I wanted to ask a question on the criminal side. On the root cause side, no drug dealer, no drugs. No drug dealer, they're not getting anywhere near an incredible person like Weston and all the other friends and all the other folks and all the other children out there. It may be a loaded question, but we're talking about a loaded weapon. A drug dealer's a killer. So on the root cause side, if you'd like to share where perhaps, and the Monmouth Regional Chamber, it's regional. So local leaders, county leaders, state and federal leaders, Congressman Chris Smith, who's been incredible on this topic nationally, they watch this information. And so are there things that this society, from a society standpoint or legislative standpoint, that would give the tools in the toolbox that are needed to keep this loaded weapon away from children, away from adults, away from society? Is there something that could be done better? Because if you deal with the root cause, the problem goes away in a perfect world.
So if I may, I mean, one of the things that was mentioned earlier is that the transformation of what we're seeing is the drugs themselves. You know, as I was saying earlier, from 2019 to 2021, we went from 21% submissions of fentanyl being involved with suspected heroin to now 96%. We've also seen the tranquilizer, xylazine, just over 3 years ago was 3% of submissions. We're now at 56%. And the problem with the xylazine is that it's not going to react to Narcan. So for all those people that we're able to save as a result of either first responders or hospitals administering the Narcan, that has no impact on the xylazine whatsoever.
That's worth repeating because a lot of folks are not aware of that. Narcan not helping.
It does no impact. Narcan is a reverse chemical for opioid, and xylazine is a substance that is not an opioid, and it's not going to have the reaction you're looking for. So you're starting to see that, and what happened to Ann is you have young people, old people, who don't understand that the substance that they're receiving is not by a chemist who's in a lab who has regulations that are going to be making sure that the right measurements are being made. These are individuals that are looking for profits. So one of the biggest things I've asked for in our legislators, and I've spoken to Congressman Chris Smith, you know, is scheduling all analogs of fentanyl to be a Schedule I controlled substance so that law enforcement can enforce, because the problem is that they just need to change a chemical compound, and if it's not on that list, we can't prosecute that particular charge.
So their hands are tied.
So their hands are tied. So we need to make sure that the analog itself of fentanyl is a Scheduled I narcotic controlled substance that we can then prosecute. You know, we have a thing called strict liability crimes, which we do prosecute strenuously here in Monmouth County, that if a person does sell drugs and that drug becomes a poison that winds up killing somebody, if we're able to prove it, we will charge that person with a strict liability homicide for killing that individual. You know, we will do everything we can, and every time we have a suspected overdose, we have our detectives go out and look to see whether we have enough evidence to charge and see who was the dealer who sold those drugs, because we will go after them.
Yes, Phil.
Loaded question, and
treat and street.
Well, no. So the one thing about the strict liability that I wish we could kind of change, or not change, but the person that's pressing that pill, mass producing that fake Roxycontin pill, that's the person that if you get caught with those materials, that should be an instant charging you with some type of strict liability, because those are the ones that are really, really causing the damage.
Like the root of the root.
And it's tough when you see a drug addict, somebody who's struggling with addiction, that, all right, here's an example, right? When I was in active addiction, I didn't care about myself. I cared about the others around me more than I cared about myself. So if I had 3 friends and we needed to go to Newark, you guys stay here, I'll go up and come back for the 3 of us. That's just who I was in addiction. I really did not care about myself. I was dead inside. I come back with my drugs and my drugs for my 3 friends, and one of my friends die. Am I getting charged with it because I'm the one that went up there? Or is it the guy that I bought it from in Newark? And a lot of times it's people that went and did the run, right? And like, that's the only thing. And again, like, it's such a loaded question is what I'm trying to say, is like, it's not like a one size fits all and we could just wipe this stuff away. I think they're doing the best job they can with the evidence that they have, but sometimes they're in situations that it's just not that simple, you know? And yeah, that's the only, when it comes to that, I just needed to say that. You guys are here. I have your ear for, I don't get to see the prosecutor very often to say things to him. That's one thing that I hope you guys take into consideration with the strict liabilities.
Well, that's what, go ahead, sorry.
And it's a valid point, and it's not something that's lost upon us when we make these decisions, right? One of the things, I mean, we just had this year where, you know, because of a very in-depth investigation, we located an individual who had a pill press, right? You know, and we'll prosecute that individual as far as we possibly can. When we're dealing with substances where there's a death, an overdose death, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to investigate that particular individual and see where they received it from. So in your hypothetical, if we came across you and we said, okay, where'd you get it from? Follow that chain all the way up as far as we can go to see if we can get to the person who's really responsible for doing it. Because if you just purchased it from somebody, you didn't make it. We're trying to find out the individuals that are actually making this chemical and these poisons that are killing our people. So we will do that, but that doesn't mean we won't put pressure on you to make sure that you come forward and tell us where you got it from. But we take those things into consideration when we make charging decisions, though.
Thank you. And
Pressure works.
And
I'm good with pressure.
Yeah, you're hearing a lot. You're hearing a lot this morning, and tough to hear these things. What are you taking out of some of the conversations that are going on with folks that
They know what they're doing, and they're murderers. They're serial murderers. They murder everyone the same exact way. And I want to see them prosecuted. I want life imprisonment, and if they kill children, I want the death penalty. And that's how I feel about this. It's very serious. They are intentionally selling something to your child knowing that your child is going to die eventually, unless you find out about it and get them intense therapy, which is the next point. It is very hard to find therapy for many parents. Kids' facilities are not, there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of beds available if they have them. You only have moments. I can't tell you how many parents I've met that their kids died while waiting to get into rehab because they did find out about it. Kids came forward and said, I'm really struggling and I don't know how to do this and I want to stop, but I can't. It hurts. It hurts and I can't stop. And this person keeps telling me that I should just do a little bit more. I cannot tell you how many kids have died in that position because parents can't afford the facility. It's $60,000 at 50%, discount. They can't get their kids in within, the next day. They're getting a bed on Monday. They're dying on Saturday night. Every weekend we brace ourselves because we know there's going to be a lot of kids coming in to our groups, our support groups on Monday. We have 34,000 in our support group. There's another group that has about 85,000. But I tell parents when they come to me, what can I do? I say, get them in right now. Get them in today. Do what you have to do. Go take them to a 72-hour hold. And that is something that I think that the system needs to work on because 72-hour holds are for people who are threatening their lives, their own lives, if they're suicidal or something. Fentanyl will kill your child, and they know that they're doing something that they can't stop doing. And I really do believe that we need to open 72-hour holds to children while parents can find the appropriate care for their kids. But we also need more, facilities that will take children, and we don't have enough. So I think that's a big thing that we need to tackle. I was speaking with Phil earlier about that, and he was saying that there's a lot of red tape, and it's just a shame because I can't stress enough. It's not a matter of if you're going to die if you try fentanyl one time. It's when. Most kids don't live more than 3 to 5 weeks, and that's 5 weeks is a long time. With people who are opioid dependent, maybe addicts, people who have been doing it for a while, they might live, a little bit longer, a year. But, fentanyl is going to kill them. But, getting back to the prosecution side of things, I really want to see this prosecuted to the fullest extent. Make no mistake, these drug dealers know exactly what they're doing, and they don't care if your child dies. Because in every drug bust, in cars that they find little blue pills, I'll show you hundreds of thousands of dollars as to why they don't care. Because there's somebody behind them. It is so addictive. All they have to do is get the next person to try it once. That's all it takes. It's a business. It's a multi-billion-dollar business operating in America with no penalties. There's no regulations. Let's talk about it. There's no taxes because, it's an illegal business. They're being allowed to operate in this country. Nothing's being done, quite frankly. And we have to rely now on local prosecutors to hopefully do the right thing and prosecute these people. So I commend you for saying what you said because it's really important to prosecute.
Thank you. And I wanted Phil to speak a little bit before we're going to open up to questions in a couple of minutes, and then I wanted to also have all the guests give the key points that you want folks to take with them from this meeting and also contact information. You heard me say a little earlier, treat to street. If I had that captured correctly, the healthcare systems are burdened in certain ways. But when a parent brings their children to a facility, using that as an example, they think that perhaps they're in a safe spot where they can pause for a moment, believing that there's top care and things are going to be addressed, but then they may find that the child is discharged 3 hours later. Can you speak to that issue and the strains on the healthcare community and perhaps what we could do better? And then we'd like to get it open, and then we want to talk about some of the key items that everyone wants folks to leave with today. Go ahead, Phil.
So this is in no way a shot at our hospital systems, right? We have nurses on the front line and doctors that are in ERs that are doing the best they can every single day. That being said, we have a lot of issues with bringing somebody to the hospital that's having a mental health crisis, experiencing just below the current standards of like, I want to kill myself, I have an intent, I have a plan, right? Those are the things that we need for involuntary holds. But like hearing voices, seeing objects, and the ER's discharging these people without sending them to facilities, right? That's one thing. I want to touch on, and you know, you were talking about the 72-hour holds. I brought this up when I first came back from Florida. In Florida, they have a Baker Act, which is a 72-hour hold, but they also have something called a Marchman Act, right? A Marchman Act is when your loved one is a clear and present danger to themselves. You could go to the court with the evidence of like, hey, he crashed his car, he overdosed 4 times. Here is the last 3 weeks of his life. He's a danger to himself and others. And the judge can make a decision for that person to be held for 30 days in a facility. If I get somebody sent to my facility on a Marchman Act and they leave, they walk out, we are required by law to call the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department picks that individual up, gives them the opportunity to A, go back to the facility, or B, go to the county jail and finish the 30 days there. It's called the Marchman Act. I brought that up here, and it was vilified by people about taking away people's rights, but there has to be some type of middle ground where you are right. People are overdosing. They're overdosing. They are a danger. They are going to die. So some people will say, well, Phil, there's no studies done that when you put somebody on an involuntary hold that the success rates actually work, right? But my cousin, he was an alcoholic, and he was drinking. And now I do this job, right? I help random families all the time, but a lot of times I can't help people in my own family. I went there, I got him in, he left, he ended up drinking and falling into a fire pit. Ended up in the hospital for like 3 weeks because he got drunk and he fell into a fire pit. He got out, and then when he got out of the hospital, he continued to drink, and then crossed Route 36 on Laurel Ave, drunk against a green light, and got hit and killed. And my cousin was somebody that was a clear and present danger to himself, that we couldn't get to stay in treatment. And so, you know, what is the answer? Do I think a Marchman Act, it should happen? I at least for adolescents, right? At least for adolescents. All right, so the guy's 18, he's making his own decisions, but you have an adolescent. You know, I think that, yes, you are right. And then as far as the facilities go, you know, it's been hard to get licensing in this state, and a lot of states. But you know, Guardian Recovery Network opened up an adolescent detox res, and much to all of our surprise, we thought it was going to just be full. We thought they were going to open up and that place was going to be full. But a lot of youth are not meeting the SUD criteria, the substance criteria. They're not using the substances as much as they're using the THC pens that are causing psychosis, but they're not licensed for mental health. They're licensed for SUD. Now they need to apply for a second mental health license. That process is going to take a year. So they're going to sit for a year with a facility that's more than capable of helping a lot of youth, but they're going to wait for the license to become active. I have another friend in Princeton at the Living Room that's waiting for his adolescent mental health license, because to his surprise, he got licensed. His name's Dr. August Lemming. Guy's absolutely amazing. I use him as my own personal therapist. He's amazing, right? If there's one guy that should be working with our youth, it's this guy.
and he's waiting for his mental health license because, much to his surprise, his SUD track for adolescents, it doesn't have anybody in it because they don't hit the SUD criteria. There's just a lot. There's
And
a
Lindsay,
lot.
can you pick up on that? Because I think this connects with a lot of the diversion work and other work you're doing in the mental health space from what he's saying.
There are definitely limitations to what each of us do. There's no doubt to that. And as a prosecutor, it's one of the things that we do have to accept. But then I hear stories like Anne, and I see how she's turning this immeasurable pain into purpose, and it drives us. And it drives us to try to fill some of those gaps. And I gave the example of we're seeing that the high percentage of our Link to Care referrals were coming from seniors. So what do? We try to put together a senior subcommittee and get resources out to those individuals. Link to Care right now is focused solely on adults. Whenever we do get an adolescent referral, one of our partner agencies is able to link them up to different services, but it's not through the Link to Care process. But as we start hearing some of these needs, it's important for us to then say, okay, where do we take these needs? What can be done with some of these needs? How can we go ahead and potentially link them up to different services? So I'm sure that this is an ongoing conversation that we'll continue to have. All of what I do is outside of family court. So I'm not working with the children except for what you heard in Student Leaders of Hope. And the Student Leaders of Hope program is more of a preventative program, as you're starting to hear that. Our partners, which one of the reasons why we link up to them is that they are giving priorities to a lot of the individuals that need the beds, that need to be linked up to different services, and we're lucky for that. When it comes to the RDP program, if we need individuals to get a bed, they're in a bed within 24 hours. If we need them to be linked up to an intake appointment, that's happening within a couple of days. They're getting an intake appointment, and that's because we see the urgent need that is necessary to be able to address these problems. I also think it's important for us to have our boots on the ground, and I think Prosecutor Santiago believes in that as well. That's why we're out in the community. That's why you're going to see him and his executive staff constantly out in the community listening to people. We do not pretend to be the experts in this field, but yet we have the ability to listen to the experts who generously give us this information, like what you're hearing from Phil, like what you're hearing from Anne, to be able to synthesize that and to be able to link the best resources together to handle these problems. And that continues to be our job. One of the things that I'm most interested in is to both efficiently but compassionately handle these cases involving mental health and substance use, and we're going to continue to do that.
Thank you very much, and your presence here today exemplifies that perfectly. What we're going to do, we're going to open it up to a few questions, and then we're going to come back to our guests before we wrap it up, and also the county prosecutor could perhaps share your thoughts on the commonality of purpose that we all have here, some from disparate groups and disparate interests, and how it really does tie together for a common enemy, fentanyl poisoning, and tying to our overdose awareness this month.
Right.
Yes, thank you very much.
Great program. Can you talk about cannabis and its as a gateway drug, and where does it fit into this, and the legalization, does that make your job more difficult?
I have a lot of info on the cannabis if you want.
If you want to start, Phil, sure.
All right,
My question was less loaded, but that's a great question.
I just want to give you a quick rundown of the cannabis, and then I'll flip it over to you, right? When we legalized marijuana, we commercialized marijuana. So we took marijuana that when I was in high school was around 10% pure THC. We handed it over to big corporations that, you know, in labs, scientifically, with seed splitting and all these different genetic modifications, whatever they did, they took the plant up to 30-40% THC in the plant. Then they took it a step further. They shot butane and propane through that genetically modified marijuana, coming up with concentrated THC oils. Have you ever seen somebody vaping a THC pen? And it's got the gold honey oil in it? That oil is anywhere from 70 to 80 to 90% pure THC. And with that, we are seeing young people going into psychosis from smoking THC. I did not believe this when I first heard about it. There's a guy named Michael DeLeon who runs a program called Steered Straight, not Scared Straight. It's kind of a play on Steered Straight. But he was the first person to tell me about this. I got a phone call from the Homedale Police about an individual that was in psychosis, and they asked me to go out with them. I got there. He said he was hearing voices and seeing demons. I thought he was on meth, right? That's the first thing I asked. He said, no, I don't do that. I only smoke my pen. What about, do you take a hallucinogenic? No. I just smoked my pen. We got him to the hospital. He only failed for THC. That was the first THC psychosis I saw, and I've seen about a dozen more since then. People forget that marijuana is a hallucinogen. It's just, you know, people that smoked in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they're like, no, I don't hallucinate off of that. But they're smoking. We've created a whole new class of drug. So you take a 15-year-old kid and you gave him a 90% pure THC pen, and they're hitting them all day long. And that's another reason why mental health has skyrocketed in adolescence. And the SUD tracks aren't working, because insurance companies are not going to say, yes, you meet SUD criteria from smoking marijuana. It's mental health. And go ahead, sorry.
I will say it's a very, alarming but awakening statistic that we have to recognize. And the reality is, my personal experience, yes, I've seen people who start off with smoking marijuana, and when that doesn't get them where they want to get to in their highs, they fill it with something else, right? It is something, and I have the conversation with my young children now. I don't care that it's been legalized, right? It's still a substance. It still can cause serious harm and death. You're not to use it under any circumstances. And we're still going to deal with the situation is, if you're not going to the dispensary and you're getting it from your friend or you're getting it from somebody else, those substances are still going to be laced with fentanyl, right? It's still a poison. It's still going to be there, and you don't know where you're getting it from. It makes things difficult for us and law enforcement to try and enforce now that we've had it legalized, but it's still, like alcohol, right, can still lead to addiction issues and problems and causing health issues and concerns that we then have to still deal with at the same time. So it is something that is a new phase of what we have to deal with on the law enforcement side of things. And my own personal opinion I won't express, but the reality is I think it's an issue that we have to really be more focused on now.
When perception of harm goes down, teen use goes up. And that's what we need to think about in the messaging with legalizing marijuana, is we're telling kids that it's safe and that it's okay. And that's one of the major things that I talk about in schools. And then the other problem we have is we have a large percentage of our youth vaping nicotine salt, which is extremely addictive. So we're priming this generation of child to be the next generation of addict, because we have them hooked on nicotine at extremely high rates in middle schools and high schools, shoving THC pens in their faces, and then wondering why at 21, 22, they're struggling with other substances. They're being primed right now for addiction.
Ann?
And Lindsay after, thank you.
I will tell you that I meet parents all the time whose kids died smoking marijuana laced with fentanyl, and the kids have this crazy perception that if fentanyl is in marijuana, it will burn off and it won't kill them, but it's not true. A lot of people burn fentanyl to get high with a little, they'll take a straw or something that they can find and light it underneath a tin foil and smoke it that way. Before it gets to the burning point, there's going to be some fentanyl in the actual weed before that will get hot enough that will go into their lungs. Parents are losing kids from smoking fentanyl-laced marijuana, and the drug dealers are putting it there because it's powerful. They know it's powerful, and again, it's about getting your child addicted. So there were several dispensaries in California that have been shut down because the owners saw the value in getting people hooked. And so marijuana pens were containing fentanyl. And I just want to say something about legalizing shops, and I hope that townships who do have the jurisdiction to not allow these into their towns, drug dealers hang around those places, because when kids try to go in and get, pretend that they're, old enough to buy it, there are drug dealers that hang out outside, but, I know you can't get it inside, but, I can get it for you. So there's nothing safe about, legalizing marijuana. I'm very against it. I don't understand why we would put that gateway into our society, and it is a gateway, 100%.
Thank you, Ann. Lindsay?
One of the important things to think about is that the brain is still fully forming. So we see that the brain is still forming until about 23. And that's where you start to see really the onset of mental health kind of shine through. You start to see it around the college time period as well. So when someone starts using marijuana at a young age of 15 and they're continuously doing it as the brain is forming, what happens is there's a change in their decision making, there's a change in their impulses, there's a change in their maturity level, there's a change in their problem solving ability. And all of those things are needed in order to be a successful youth. And so when those things change, that's where you start seeing that potentially it could lead to other drugs, right? Because their inhibitions are down, they're lowered, their skills are lowered, their ability to advocate for themselves are lowered, and we're starting to see the slippery slope. We see oftentimes, because I'm also the recovery court prosecutor, I am the assistant prosecutor that is part of a team there, and every time that we're reading these their PSRs, they're essentially sentencing reports. We get to hear the history behind defendants. And when they're in recovery court, it's usually for opioids. It's an opioid use disorder. These are people who have been using for a long period of time, and their first drug has been marijuana. And it's marijuana, and it leads to pills, and it leads to heroin, which leads to fentanyl, which leads to xylazine, which is essentially, we're talking about synthetics. You also hear of something called K2. So K2 is a synthetic marijuana. When I was a Brooklyn prosecutor, there was a period in time in Williamsburg where an entire strip in Williamsburg had people that were zombies and were walking around as a result of doing K2. So it's just something for us to pay attention to. But when you consider the brain composition, it becomes a lot easier to understand why they can be preyed on, why youth can be preyed on. And also when you consider what happens to the brain once they become addicted, it's a certain level of oxytocin that's needed. And in order to constantly reach that level of a high, which Phil was talking about, you have to keep using more and more to be able to get high. You become, it's very interesting for us to see as prosecutors and to be able to navigate that. And that's why some of these addictions are really hard to be able to overcome.
Thank you.
I just want to add one quick thing. What you guys were just the synthetic marijuana and the K2s. You could find these if you go to like the old Wawas that have been gutted and now they're like an 811 or like an off-brand like Quickie Mart. Inside those, you could find at the counter Delta 8, Delta 10, and Kratom, right? Synthetic marijuana and a synthetic opioid-like that is just as addictive that our kids could buy in gas stations right now in every single town in this state, which is it's so much. This is such a multifaceted problem, and we're losing in a lot of areas. And the gas station Kratom Delta 8 area is one that we're definitely losing in. And these are legal substances.
Yeah,
these are legal substances.
Well, they should all be shut down. That's a story for another day. But I mean, obviously, when it's so clear in front of your face, common sense should dictate our legislative priorities. Next question, Jeannie, please. Thank you.
Actually, I don't have a question, but I just want to thank all of you for being on this panel to really enlightening us, because I was going to ask, what about the dispensaries? Aren't they safe? But obviously, they're not safe either. And again, I'm sorry for your loss, Anne. So thank you for being here to share what your experience was with us. And thank you for the work you're all doing. It's tremendous. And I also want to thank I got to thank Jeannie and Terrence for bringing these kinds of tough topics to the ChamberCast and broadcasting it, because people need to hear about it and people need to be aware of it. I love these two, and they're amazing, and I love what you do every month, so thank you.
Thank you for supporting all of these important meetings. She does about 10 events a month, correct? Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay. And really, I'm humbled just to sit near you, and your strength, your steel strength, is incredible, and it's just incredible. And I think we're being looked after right now, and sharing your message. And Weston's here with us, and there are no words. Prosecutor Santiago, you're the chief law enforcement officer of a county of 650,000 folks. But in many ways, you're the chief law compassion officer parallel. Can you share the common purpose that you seek here, and what you would like folks to leave with today, empowered with information that they can, for themselves or families, and to share with others?
So one of the things I had said to Ann before we started was, I really wanted to thank her for sharing her story. It's one that has to be told, because we all believe in our own little worlds that this is not going to happen to us. This is not going to happen to my family or my friends. This is what you read about in the paper that happened to somebody else. And the reality is that you're sitting here now with a bunch of people here who've lived experiences in one way or another combined, it's touched all of us in one way or another, and some more profound than others. At the end of the day, we have this shared common experience, and a common goal is to try and help others, to use those things that have happened to us in our lives and be that voice. So for those that are here and those who are listening, understand that truly, as we started off, and the DEA had this slogan for a while, one pill will kill. One pill will kill. One small amount, and described it to you, one small amount of fentanyl is enough to kill you. The best thing I can encourage anybody is don't even try anything, period. That's the easiest, simplest thing. And it's easy to say, much, much more difficult to implement. As Phil's expressed his part of being a youth, my experiences of watching. See, I had the unfortunate experience of watching my mother go through her own addiction. So to me, that was enough for me to say, all right, I'm not even going to try it because I've seen the impact that it has on a family. When you see it firsthand, it changes your life. And people have to go through the struggle. I can tell you that law enforcement will use every tool at our disposal to do all that we can to prosecute and criminalize those that need to be. We'll also do everything we possibly can to help those that need help. One of the biggest frustrations I've always experienced is when I've sat down with families and they've said, I don't understand, what did I do wrong? And they internalize it like there's something that they did that now caused this, or something that they didn't do that wasn't enough to prevent their loved one from being taken into this. And the response is, you've done nothing. You've done nothing. Unfortunately, we can prepare our children for every topic we can think of, to prepare them for the world. Eventually, they're going to go out into that world, and we have to just support them and let them know, right, that we're always going to be there to support them, but know that there are so many resources available, and they're 24/7. 24/7, you can get resources. At some point, that individual is going to get to that point in their life, and they're going to say, I need help, and you have to be there for them, and you have to support them. And it's not about what you did or didn't do. You did nothing, but just be there and be that support so you can make sure that they can overcome if they have that addiction problem. The best way to avoid the addiction is not even use it at all. So I will encourage, please, under no circumstances, don't even try it once, please. People are dying. One of the most alarming things I have to do is I look at our medical examiner reports every week. I read the reports and I see how many people have died just because of accidental overuse of a substance which they may or may not have believed was containing fentanyl. So I know we are all here together from different points, but really saying the same message, which is fentanyl is a drug that will kill you, and please avoid it at all costs.
Thank you so much. Phil and Lindsay? No.
Thank you for having me on here.
Thanks for being here.
It's I don't know, it's just really important to me to be on these panels, because at one point I didn't think I deserved any of this. I didn't think I was gonna live. I didn't think I deserved to be a dad or a husband or any of these things. So I'm grateful to be up here with you guys. It's a huge honor. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
One thing I want to point out, last year I did this, I think and we mentioned it before, because August 31st is the Overdose Awareness Day, and I know at the Berkeley Hotel they're going to have the Black Poster Project. If you haven't gone, and if you're uncertain about the impact that this has, I would encourage you to go. It is one of the most emotional things that you will see, because what they do is they have these black posters, and they have the photographs of individuals that have succumbed to either an addiction or have been poisoned and have died as a result. It's a very somber, very memorial experience that, just walking by and reading each of these placards with these individuals, you see it's a mom or it's a dad. Heartbreaking is to see when I've seen a couple or a father and son, when you see some of these things and you hear and read real life stories, not just some article you read in a newspaper, but you get to see that person's face and you hear exactly what happened and the loss It is a somber experience, and I think it's very eye-opening that if you haven't seen it, you can see the real impact that it has. So I'd encourage anyone to go there on August 31st.
Thank you so much. And Lindsay, you've been a prosecutor for 17 years. You've seen so much. What drives you, and what would you like folks to leave here today with?
So pretty much since 2019, every year on International Overdose Awareness Day, I just renew my commitment to serving the people, renew my commitment to serving all of Monmouth County to the best of my ability to help create these deflection and diversion programs. And what I have seen year after year is there is so much hope in our county. There is so much hope that people are going to recover. There is so much hope that we're going to be able to link people up to different services, both the individual as well as the family. And we've noticed that addiction does not discriminate. So it does not matter what your background or affiliation or how you identify, it affects each and every one of us. And as I sit here as one of the assistant prosecutors in Prosecutor Santiago's office, I always say to the people that we meet, we are no different than you. This is a human disease. And the best way for us to be able to eradicate addiction and the discrimination that comes with that is to connect to others. And so every single day, we try to connect to both the individual and the family in a compassionate way to solve the problems using the resources that we have. And I want to recommit myself to that this year as well.
Thank you so much. And would you like to share a thought before we wrap up?
Sure. I just want to thank everyone for listening and encourage you all to talk to your kids about peer pressure and have conversations with them if they ever feel like they're being pressured to do something that they don't want to be doing or they're struggling with something. Please tell them to come forward and speak to you, because I think that so many kids are really afraid to tell their parents that they've done something wrong. But peer pressure, please run role plays, teach them how to say no. That is such a huge thing that we've kind of dropped off. Homedale used to have a peer-to-peer program. It was so good, where peers, were there for their classmates, and that was a great program. But peer issues are so huge. It's so hard for kids to say no and walk away when it's the cool thing to do at the moment, and it's hard for them to tell parents or anybody because they don't want to get their what they call now friend in trouble. This is the fun guy that supplies everything for the parties and has these big blowout parties. So teach your kids about peer pressure. That is so huge, and obviously to stay away from anything at all, because one time is all it takes. Fentanyl pills are a chocolate chip cookie. You have no idea where the chocolate chips are going to be, and if you try a quarter of a pill, you might get the quarter that has all the poison in it. So it's poison. Tell your kids to say no, stay away, and give them the courage and the strength to say no.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you to our panel, folks. I want to thank our panel for joining, and in particular, thank you and your husband and family for being here, a legacy of love that we're paying forward today. Please share this information with folks that you know. And I'd like to thank everyone for being here, and the folks that are watching streaming, thank you very much. Let's save lives. And for the Monmouth Regional Chamber of Commerce, keep doing what you do, and we'll see you next month. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful week.